We do want to talk about Doyce's top 25
So into college.
into college. Your
So
mom
there
goes to college.
there were some shakeups in the top 25.
There were. Oh, your top 20. That's right.
Yeah, kind of the same with the back end of everybody's top 25, really.
For the most part.
But the teams that I have dropping out are Illinois, who lost again this week. It's their second week in a row to lose, and now they are not in control of their own destiny to win the West, which is Iowa is now in control of their own destiny to win the West after everything that's happened.
Oh, Lord. They're going to
Uh,
win the West with like 10 offensive points.
Basically, yeah. I mean, whoever wins the Big Ten West is just going to be fed to Ohio State or Michigan
True.
as a sacrificial lamb. Uh, yeah,
Dang,
not
that's
not a
right.
whole
So
lot
we
of chance
won't.
there.
So we can't even have four undefeateds. That's right.
No,
Damn.
we can have at most three.
Yep.
Um, Baylor also falls out of the top 25 after their loss.
Yeah.
Not a great loss for them.
Mm-mm.
Um, it wasn't even really as close as the score against Kansas State. Like they beat them pretty good.
Yep.
Texas falls out of the top 25. We'll
That was
cover that when we get to TCU.
okay. Fair.
Kentucky falls out of the top 25. North Carolina State falls out of the top 25, and Liberty falls out of the top 25. So for the top 25, I've got
Doyce's top 25.
for their first appearance in my top 25, UTSA comes in. They're 8-2 from Conference USA. Tulane lost this week to UCF, but they remain in the top 25 because so many other teams got knocked out.
Yeah, and a bunch of losses.
Yeah. Cincinnati comes back in at 23. Coastal Carolina comes in. They're 9-1 in the Sun Belt.
The
Probably should have had them ranked
Chanticleers.
before, but Grayson McCall is really fun to watch. If anybody just happens to stumble across a Coastal Carolina game, he's a fun
Yeah, I've
quarterback
seen
to
some
watch.
highlights. Yeah, he's got some cool game.
Florida State comes back into the rankings at 21.
Oh,
Uh, Oregon State comes back into the rankings at 20.
okay.
Kansas State comes back in at 19. UCLA, after getting upset by Arizona, which I'm going to be frank, I didn't watch that game. I was
I
kind of distraught after the Texas TCU game
fair.
and kind of turned everything off at that point because that was the only real game going on afterwards, and I'm done for the day.
I hear you. No, I mean it's a bad loss for them losing to an unranked team, but it did end up only being a 6 point loss, so not too terribly bad. But
Yeah, and Arizona State's
UCLA,
improved. UCLA
Arizona,
Arizona's improved. They were like one of the worst Power 5 teams in the country. It was like them, Kansas, and Duke, which Duke and Kansas have been pretty good this year too. So, you know, good on them. At 17, I've got Notre Dame, who won again. Only now they're 7-3 after their
right?
after they started so badly. They beat Clemson last week. They won again this week. It wasn't a huge game for them this week, but they did win.
They don't call them the laying down Irish.
Right. It was
They're the
them's the
fighting
fighting.
Irish.
Them's the fighting Irish. Um Next up at 16, I've got UCF. They are 8-2. They are my highest ranked group of 5 team.
That was a big win for them.
Yeah, beating Tulane. There's now I think there's a 3-way tie at the top of the AAC between UCF, Tulane, and Cincinnati. Two of those teams will end up playing each other again in the conference title game. Next up is Ole Miss, who fell to Alabama. Do you want to kind of cover this game out right now, or do you want to wait until I get to Alabama?
Let's wait till we get to Alabama.
Okay.
I do want to at least say before we go move on, Ole Miss should have won that game,
Yes, they should.
but we'll talk more about it when we get to Alabama.
Plenty of chances to win the game.
Mm-hmm.
At 14, Oregon, who didn't look great in
No.
that game, to say the least.
Yeah, that's rough, man. I mean, it I didn't get to see a ton of that one. I know that was one of the ranked matchups. I didn't really watch too much of it, but the little bit I did watch, it just seemed like it was always Washington. Like Washington had, we talk about momentum sometimes. If you want to talk
Yeah.
about it, it seemed like Washington basically had the momentum almost the whole time.
I mean, I say Oregon didn't look that great. Like they played well, and they were at home against Washington, and Bo Nix looked pretty good for the most part. He did get hurt in the fourth quarter, but their defense just, I mean, they were awful. I know Washington has a good offense, but that was atrocious defensively. I mean, it was just Oregon would score, they would hand the ball back to Washington, and Washington would be in the end zone like 5 plays later. And it was like that basically the whole game, it felt like. I mean, they scored 37, so it wasn't quite like that the whole game. But it just, especially in the second half, like it just felt like Washington was going to get the ball, they were going to score. And then Oregon would get the ball and they probably would score. Like it was a fun game. There was at one point, and I'm trying to bring up the drive because I wanted to give props for this because this was a really, really impressive drive. So Washington had gone down and trying to take the lead. It was 27-21 or 27-31, Oregon in the lead. And Washington drives down from their own 2-yard line. They drive all the way down the field. They're about to score to take the lead. Oregon intercepts them. And this is with 4 minutes. No. This is with 14:27 remaining on the clock. Oregon takes over. They go on a 20-play, 91-yard drive that takes up 10 and a half minutes.
Holy shit.
Kicks a field goal to go up 7. And then Washington scores in 3 plays, 65 yards, and 47 seconds to tie it up.
They couldn't have taken off like 4 more minutes of the clock.
I mean, it's just
dude.
wild. That's what I'm talking about. Like Oregon, like that is a super, super impressive drive.
They gave their defense so much time to rest and be ready.
Yep.
And then they just go out there in 3 plays and oh my
such an impressive drive. Such an impressive drive. And then, Washington gets a touchdown. Washington's defense stands up and Oregon ends up going for it on 4th down and doesn't get it with the game was tied at that point. They were already kind of in field goal range for whenever Washington gets the ball back. They're already almost in field goal range. And then Washington kicks a field goal. Oregon tried to mount a drive, but no Bo Nix. Bo Nix tried to get in the game at the end, but they didn't have a timeout. And
I didn't realize Bo Nix didn't make it back in at the end. That
I think
that makes a big difference.
I think he might have made it back in for the last play.
Not enough. You got to have your guy.
Yeah,
that's
like
so
they couldn't sub him in.
They're still pretty highly ranked though. That's fair.
Yeah, I mean, I've got them at 14. They're still a 2-loss team. Like if you start going down the list, and you get to 3-loss teams pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's true. It's
It's getting
That's
later
why
in the season now.
I was gonna mention like, oh shit, we could even have just the 4 undefeateds being but then I forgot that Michigan and Ohio State have to play each other,
Right.
and so it's crazy that we'll only be able to get 3 undefeated teams at the most this year. Usually, it tends to be quite a few more before. Maybe not. I guess I'm
No,
kind of
this
overthinking it.
it's
I'm
fairly
overthinking
standard.
it.
It's
Yeah,
fairly standard in the playoff era. You might end
true,
up with one undefeated team, but
fair.
this isn't the BCS era where you could get 2 or 3, 4 undefeated teams at the end of the season, which even then it didn't happen that often.
I guess that's true.
But at 13, I've got Washington, who, as we just talked about, beat Oregon, so they get to move ahead of them. They're both 8-2.
AP poll has them behind them.
Do they really?
Yeah,
Come on, AP, be better.
yeah.
That team
Washington
just
15, Oregon 12.
Washington just beat Oregon at Oregon. Anybody that has them behind them is an idiot and should have their vote stripped.
Yeah, because they're the same record, and yeah,
Like
that's
if Washington had won, if the game had been at Washington, then I think you could maybe talk yourself into, well, if Bo Nix plays the whole game, it's on the road, close game on the road, missing starting quarterback halfway through the
yeah.
fourth
With
quarter.
them being that close, you should put the team that won in front of them.
Right.
That just makes more
Especially when the
sense.
team that won is the road team. Like that
Right.
has to matter.
I agree. Especially in college football because the environment, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this year, even teams like Alabama have really struggled on the road. Like
Mm-hmm.
really struggled.
Yep.
Penn State's at 12. I still really like Penn State. They beat the freaking pants off of Maryland this week.
30-0.
Just absolutely destroyed them.
Mm-hmm.
I've got Alabama at 11.
Okay.
I know they're higher in the AP. I don't care.
8, so they're not that much higher. I mean, they got them above Clemson and Utah, who obviously you haven't mentioned yet.
Yeah.
And I guess the other one you haven't mentioned that might be North Carolina. Is that the other one
Yep.
that you haven't mentioned that is above them? Yeah.
Yep.
So I mean, that's fair.
Like,
They did what they needed to do to win the game. I'll say
right.
that, but they should not have won that game.
No. And this is they shouldn't have beat Texas. They got lucky to beat Texas.
Yeah.
We've now seen Texas isn't that great. They should have.
I don't know if I'd go that far. We'll talk about that one here again in a minute too, but
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd go that far because Texas has looked pretty good, and with Quinn Ewers behind center, I mean, he looks good. They look like a good football team.
He's had
Well,
some
I
really,
mean,
really tough games.
I've given him some heat as well with making some questionable throws, but however, Texas has looked like a good football team. So the fact that
Yeah. Yeah. They
regardless, thank you God, Alabama or Ole Miss had that game like almost the whole game. It seemed
Yeah,
like.
it felt like they were going to win the whole time, and then until they didn't, you know, it. But it happens. I mean, that's kind of
Oh, it
what
definitely.
it's kind of what Alabama does to you sometimes, where they hang around and they hang around and they hang around, and then Bryce Young does something, and they win the game. And at
I'm
the end, you're
trying to
sitting
remember
there
now.
thinking, how the hell did that just happen?
I'm kind of mad at myself because I can't remember right now, and I didn't write it down. There was quite a controversial play late.
There always is.
True. Fuck. I'm mad at myself now. I want to say something with like, dang it. I'm not going to be able to remember. So I probably shouldn't even have brought it up. Anyways, Jalen Dart, is that his name? Jackson
Jackson
Dart.
Jackson Dart.
He looks pretty good, man.
He does. He's
He
very
like
talented and he runs that offense really well. I was really impressed with the running back. I don't want to mess up it. I don't want to mess
yes,
up his
he was
name.
really good, dude.
Judkins,
100
Quentin Judkins.
100
135 yards, 2
35 2
touchies.
yeah, balling. They
Like
were
they
able to run the ball.
Yeah, and they barely even use Zach Evans, who's also a really talented running back too. But what really comes down to is Alabama was able to convert on the big downs, and Ole Miss was not. Ole Miss
Well,
they went 8
Alabama,
of 16 on third down, but they went 0 for 3 on fourth down. It's hard
yeah,
to win a
that's
game
tough,
if you go 0 for 3 on fourth down. You have three turnovers on downs. It's hard to win. But like you look at all the
especially against
stats,
a coach like Saban.
right? But like you look at all the stats, they both had a turnover. So Alabama didn't win the turnover battle. Ole Miss had more first downs. They had more yards. They had more passing yards. They had more rushing yards. They should have won.
They should have won. I'm
But
right there with you.
at the end of the day,
Saban did it again. I mean, they've been there and done that. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to keep his players calm. Like, look, there's plenty of football left. But there was even a moment like in the third quarter where like they were showing Lane Kiffin on the sidelines, like, man, like he's got this. Like, hell yeah, let's go. Like taking down Saban. That's dope. And then all of a sudden it's just like, wait a second, what's going on? And then all of a sudden you're losing, and then the clock hits 0, and it's like, whoa,
yeah.
hold on a
And
second.
it's kind of been the nature of when Lane Kiffin faces Nick Saban, he tends to go for it on fourth down a lot because he knows he has to score touchdowns. He can't get away with field goals. And at times he's maybe a little over aggressive to try and win the game. And it ends up costing him, making him lose the game. That's kind of what happened last year when they were playing. Is the score in last year's game was very, very lopsided, but it was lopsided because Lane kept going for it on fourth down to try and get back in the game, and they kept not being able to do it. So it was that
And
it
then
was
not
that
being able to
aggression
hold
to try and
Alabama.
win, because they were moving the ball in Alabama last year. They would get stopped on one set of downs and they'd go for it on fourth down, and it made sense at the time to go for it on fourth down, but they didn't get it, and then Alabama gets another touchdown. Then you get same situation, and now you're like, well, now I'm down 2 touchdowns instead of 1, so now I have to go for it.
Right.
Didn't get it. Now I'm down 3 touchdowns, so I have to go for it. And then it just
And
snowballs.
yeah, true. Man, Alabama almost got their third loss, which would have been
But Lane's going to get him
sweet,
one of
sweet
these
joy.
one of these years. Lane's going to get him.
I agree. I agree. This it seemed like this was the year though, and
I like
they
what
kind
I
of gave
like
it
what
away.
Lane I like what Lane's building at Ole Miss if he stays there.
Unfortunately for them, now it looks like LSU is gonna hold the SEC West and be the
Yep.
one facing Georgia.
So moving on from Alabama, Clemson is at number 10. I don't think we really need to say too much about Clemson.
No.